A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam & Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Great to have you with us as we begin yet another week full of votes for Second Amendment sanctuaries, and not just in Virginia, by the way, where, as of Monday morning, we have 75 Second Amendment sanctuary counties and 17, I believe it's 17, maybe actually, you know what? Yeah, I think it's 75 in 17 cities and towns in the state of Virginia that have adopted Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. But we have more votes coming on Monday, on Tuesday, and on Wednesday of this week in Virginia for sure. But here's what's fascinating. We are really seeing this movement take off all across the country. As a matter of fact, we now have a Second Amendment sanctuary community in the state of New Jersey. Yes, West Milford, New Jersey adopted a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with Scott Bach, the executive director of the Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs, about that vote, as well as perhaps a pending vote in a New Jersey county as well. You're going to hear from Scott Bach in just a moment, but I also want to let you know that after that interview, we're going to talk more about the Second Amendment sanctuary movement, as well as the push for gun control in the state of Virginia. We're going to go through some of the rumors that have been floating around about a couple of bills and what Governor Ralph Northam is planning on doing. But right now, I want you to take a look and a listen to our interview with Scott Bach in New Jersey, talking about the spread of the Second Amendment sanctuary movement to the Garden State. Scott, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program. It's great talking with you today.
Thanks, Kim. It's great to be back.
I know we're going to be talking a lot because we're going to need your advice here in Virginia about how to deal with some of these gun control bills headed our way. But I find it fascinating. You know, here in Virginia right now, we are in the midst of a Second Amendment sanctuary tsunami. We have 75 of the state's 95 counties that have currently adopted Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. I believe we have 17 towns and cities across the state. And over the weekend, I actually saw that the Second Amendment sanctuary movement has officially arrived in New Jersey, with West Milford, New Jersey, adopting a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution.
Yes, indeed, the popcorn kernels have started to pop in New Jersey. It's the first. It won't be the last. I don't know if it'll be quite as pervasive as Virginia, but West Milford is one of the few pro-gun, very rural counties in the state. It actually neighbors where I live in the state. Mm-hmm. And yeah, without prompting on the part of gun rights groups, I mean, this is an organic movement. And now I don't know if you heard this, but just recently, the county of Sussex in New Jersey, which is probably the most conservative county in the state, mm-hmm. On its own, one of the legislators from that county is proposing that the county declare itself a sanctuary county. So, it's largely symbolic. Okay, listen, most people know this, but maybe in Virginia it's not largely symbolic. Maybe there's an actual consequence to it. But in New Jersey, the towns and counties don't have that much to do with with formation. They have to follow state law. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because in Virginia we've got the same. So we're a Dillon rule state in Virginia, which supposedly means that the state government decides everything, and county and local governments are subordinate to the state. But what I find fascinating in Virginia and even in New Jersey, Scott. So in Virginia we've got a couple of Commonwealth attorneys. Those are the local prosecutors that have said we're not going to prosecute low-level marijuana offenses. It doesn't matter that it's a state law. We're just, these charges are brought to us. We're going to dismiss them. And we've not heard anything, about the governor calling out the National Guard or vowing consequences for these Commonwealth attorneys that don't, follow state drug law. And as I was doing some research about West Milford, I ran across some comments by New Jersey's Attorney General, Gabir Gurwal, who earlier this year told prosecutors that they have the discretion to enforce or not the state's laws against possessing cannabis. I'm quoting here from a story from NJ.com. The Attorney General announced on Wednesday, again, this was earlier this year, that instead of seeking to decriminalize marijuana possession, municipal prosecutors should use their discretion on each case. He said, quote, municipalities cannot decriminalize conduct that the legislature has criminalized, but they can and should strive to ensure that individual justice is done in individual cases. So I on the one hand, yes, you're right. These measures are largely symbolic. But on the other hand, prosecutors and law enforcement absolutely have the discretion to say, listen, this is not going to, it sounds like even in New Jersey, to say this is going to be a waste of our time and resources, and we're not going to pursue these types of crimes.
Well, as a matter of the way things work, they have the discretion. As a matter of what the law says, that's another thing entirely. Listen, it's a double standard, clearly. And the sanctuary, Second Amendment, locale movement is designed to capitalize on that double standard, okay? But the bottom line is, when it comes to guns, they're going to throw the book, and their hypocrisy is going to be exposed. But it is a wonderful thing to watch us jam that logic right in their faces. The logic that they themselves have said, well, the law doesn't really apply here. We're not going to prosecute you. We're going to look the other way. But then they're not going to do it when it comes to gun rights, which is, that's really where the battle is going to take place. It is a double standard. Nobody should expect that, at least in New Jersey, that, laws are not going to be enforced. There may well be a few locales in New Jersey where that'll be the case, but, then we'll see the state jump in and, arrest the executives of those locales as being lawless. It is truly hypocrisy, a double standard. It's, the movement is a great thing because it exposes that.
Yeah.
It just exposes, we selectively, listen, this country is in it's a serious thing when executives, and elected officials choose and decide which laws they're going to enforce. The whole notion of justice being blind is gone. As we devolve into lawlessness, yes, it's right and it's good that we, are using their own techniques against them, but nobody should be under any confusion, at least in the Garden State, that it's a double standard and, it's cute and it's a good thing and we're encouraging it and we're nurturing it and we're helping it. But, things are continuing to devolve into a more and more lawless state. I'm sorry to report.
Well, no, I agree that the Second Amendment sanctuary movement is not, as I've said, is not a suit of armor for the Second Amendment. And, here in Virginia, I've been telling folks, listen, just because you live in a county that passed a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution, don't think that everything's fine and dandy now, because it's not. This is a defensive measure, and it is certainly not a perfect defense against some of the infringements that are coming our way in Virginia and the infringement on rights that are already taking place in New Jersey. But as you say, I think it is time to use their words and their tactics and throw them right back in their face. If it's fine for you to do this, well, then why isn't it fine for us to do this as well? Meanwhile, in New Jersey, we do still have, I think, a little bit of hope, certainly not from the legislature or the governor, but we're still watching that Rogers versus Grewal case, Scott. I checked with the Supreme Court's website this morning, and the orders from Friday's conference were listed once again. They're holding on to that Rogers case, challenging the carry laws in the state of New Jersey. We don't really know what's going to happen here, but I think it's a good sign that so far we've not heard the Supreme Court declare this New York City gun case to be moot. And we've not seen any action. They've not, dismissed the Rogers versus Grewal case. They're still holding on to that, as they have for months now, for some reason.
They are clearly holding on to the Rogers case for action in the New York City case. And they didn't listen. If the New York City case had been moot, they didn't have to hear it and hear argument.
Right.
So, in my opinion, it's unlikely that it will be declared moot. It seems that there is will in the Supreme Court to use the New York City case and our speculation for Rogers is that the New York City case is going to set some ground rules, standard of review, is it strict scrutiny, intermediate scrutiny, or something else? Those are all buzzwords for Second Amendment, constitutional, the standard by which you measure statutes that infringe on fundamental rights. And depending on the outcome to that, all kinds of lower level state and local legislation will either be upheld or it will fall. We think they're going to use the New York City case to set a high bar, and then one of two things will happen with the New Jersey carry case. Either they will take the case directly and hear it directly, or they'll send it back to the lower courts with instructions to follow the new rules. Either way, it's good news. Okay, whether they take it directly and deal New Jersey a crippling blow, or send it back to a lower court with instructions to follow new rules, and the lower court delivers a crippling blow. We're in the end game here, and it's a very exciting time because I think we're going to have a breakthrough on right to carry, one way or the other. Whichever way it goes, we're excited.
I suspect that you're right, and I know that we might still have a little ways to go in terms of the timing, but I do believe that better days are ahead for New Jersey residents in terms of their rights being recognized. In the meantime, though, again, Scott, you've got to deal with an anti-gun legislator and an anti-gun governor. Phil Murphy has, tried to use the attack on the Jewish community in Jersey City last week as a reason to stump for more federal gun control laws. I wrote a piece at Bearing Arms over the weekend pointing out that it wasn't the federal laws that failed in New Jersey. It was New Jersey's laws. It was the fact that you had a community that was utterly defenseless because of New Jersey's carry laws. Because in a state of 10 million people, you have less than 1,000 concealed carry licenses. And so when you've got these killers intent on taking as many innocent lives as possible, there was nobody there in that community besides law enforcement who could possibly fight back.
Well, I'd add to it that all Governor Murphy has done is impose law and regulation that affects law-abiding citizens. He hasn't done anything to severely punish criminal behavior with firearms. So it's in addition to what you said, it's a failure of the governor's own policies because he's so obsessed with targeting gun rights rather than punishing gun crime that there's very little, if anything, of what he's passed that would affect anything. I mean, it's all nonsensical. Criminals don't follow gun laws. The only thing they understand is severe punishment, and that's what's been sorely lacking. So, of course, he's not going to look inward and blame himself. He's going to blame other states. It's a classic, move of anti-gun politicians to blame, target gun rights and then blame someone else when it doesn't work.
Yeah. When does the 2020 session kick off in New Jersey?
In mid-January.
Okay.
It's a 2-year session. They're in lame duck right now. There's all kinds of bills coming through. It's one of the most dangerous times right now for gun rights. And then, starting in January and February, they'll be reintroducing hundreds of anti-gun bills, and it's our job to monitor them and then, try to limit, which ones move. But, that's quite a game.
It is.
But that's what we do.
Well, listen, I appreciate you taking a couple minutes today. I know we'll be talking again in the very near future. And again, it's not a perfect solution, but congratulations on the Second Amendment sanctuary movement spreading to the state of New Jersey. I hope it flourishes there.
Thanks, Cameron. It's great to be back.
You bet. Scott Bach, Executive Director of the Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs, with us here on Bearing Arms Cam & Company. All right, we will be paying very close attention to what's going on in New Jersey and, frankly, every other state around the country. We are kind of, I wouldn't even say we're in a lull because we're really not. We've got a lot of stuff going on in the country, but when, January rolls around here in just a couple of weeks and these legislative sessions kick off, expect a huge push for gun control, not only in places like New Jersey, Massachusetts, California, New York, Virginia, but Nevada, we're going to see a big push. New Mexico, Colorado, they're coming back with more gun control laws. Washington State, we're looking at. New Hampshire, we're looking at. Maine may not so much be an issue this year, but really, again, no matter where you live, chances are there's going to be some bills introduced that would absolutely infringe on your right to keep and bear arms. And that is the case, certainly in the state of Virginia. However, having said that, we also are seeing a number of bills that I think are getting misinterpreted, as well as just some flat out nonsensical rumors that are going around. So I want to address this. I actually have a piece at Bearing Arms right now that you can share. Feel free, please, actually, to share the separating fact from fiction with Ralph Northam's gun control plan. So let's talk about a couple of the things that are kind of going around right now. There are a couple of bills that I am seeing where the language, I think, that's in the bill is kind of getting misinterpreted. So there's one called Senate Bill 64. And the rumor about Senate Bill 64, and I'm just quoting here from one tweet that I saw, because this is generally speaking what we're hearing. Known as Senate Bill 64, the bill would, quote, instantly transform all martial arts instructors into criminal felons and would criminalize all firearms training classes, including concealed carry classes. Now, is that the case? It is not the case. That is not what Senate Bill 64 does. What Senate Bill 64 does is add a provision to the existing state law in Virginia that would, in essence, ban the public assembly of individuals who are armed for the purposes of civil insurrection. Now, the reason why this is being seen as, a bill that would ban self-defense classes, would ban concealed carry courses, is because folks are getting confused about what's already on the law books in the state of Virginia. So Senate Bill 64 has several paragraphs worth of information, but only one paragraph is actually new. So you got folks that are seizing on this language. A person is guilty of unlawful paramilitary activity punishable as a Class 5 felony if he teaches or demonstrates any other person the use, application, or making of any firearm, explosive, or incendiary device or technique capable of causing injury or death to such persons, knowing or having reason to know or intending that such training will be employed for use in or in furtherance of a civil disorder, assembles with one or more persons for the purpose of training with, practicing with, or being instructed in the use of any firearm, explosive, or incendiary device or technique capable of causing injury or death to persons, intending to employ such training for use in or in furtherance of a civil disorder. So in other words, this is not going to apply to concealed carry courses. This is not going to apply to firearms training or martial arts courses. This is falls under a section of code in Virginia law dealing with, quote unquote, paramilitary activities. If there is any concern about this bill as far as it might apply to legal gun owners who are lawfully exercising their Second Amendment rights, I think that it may come into play against open carry marches or Second Amendment rallies where there are a lot of legally owned gun owners who are there. Although, again, the key is that this has to be in furtherance of civil disorder. And that's not what law-abiding gun owners are all about. We're about ensuring and upholding the constitutionality of laws that are on the books, ensuring that our rights are not violated. But this seems more designed to go after groups like Antifa than members of the Virginia Citizens Defense League. All right. Then we've got another bill, House Bill 67. That started popping up over the weekend. And there were a lot of folks who were concerned about this. I saw a tweet. Virginia just fired back by introducing a bill that terminates the employment of any public safety officer who refuses to enforce gun control. And that sounds really plausible, doesn't it? Given the fact you've got, Representative Donald McEachin out there saying Governor Northam should bring in the National Guard. It sounds absolutely possible that some lawmaker would say, oh, so these Second Amendment sanctuary communities, they think they can just, enforce the laws as they see fit. Well, we'll make it easier to fire these people. But again, that's not what the bill does. It's not a good bill, as far as I'm concerned, but it's not about stripping Second Amendment sanctuaries of their law enforcement. So again, you got to look at the existing language in the existing code of Virginia. Right now, the law states that any employee of the Commonwealth or of any county, city, town, or other political subdivision or of any agency of any one of them, basically, when they strike or willfully refuse to perform the duties of their employment, they shall be deemed to have been terminated and shall thereafter be ineligible for employment in any position or capacity during the next 12 months by the Commonwealth or any county, city, town, or other political subdivision of the Commonwealth. Basically, if you've got a public employee who strikes, they can be fired. what this bill does is it actually takes that language out of the law and replaces it with any public safety employee. So as Gabriel Malore, who's an attorney in Virginia, noted over the weekend, he says this legislation would make it so that public employee union folks cannot be disciplined for striking. It doesn't have anything to do with removing cops who say, you know what, this person over there, may have a 20-round magazine. I'm not going to go arrest that person for having a 20-round magazine on their property. It is instead a measure that makes it easier, makes it possible for public employees who are not public safety officers to strike without consequence. Again, not a good bill as far as I'm concerned, but not anything that is actually aimed at Second Amendment sanctuary communities. All right, and then finally, there's a rumor that's been going around, and I'm just gonna this bugs the crud out of me. All right, so this is what I saw, and this is not true, by the way. I just want to make sure this is understand this is not true. This is not actually happening, but it's the rumor going around that Governor Northam is pushing to cut off electricity, telephones, faxes, cell phones, and the internet in areas where he plans to send the National Guard to forcibly seize guns when the Democrat legislature convenes in January. That's nonsense. It's just flat out nonsense. As I said at the beginning of the program, we've got 75 Second Amendment sanctuary counties in Virginia. We've got 17 cities. We're going to have more by the end of the week. If this were actually the case, then Governor Northam would be looking at cutting off electricity and the internet to most of the state of Virginia, which, by the way, would it's kind of hard to make that fly under the radar, right? When 80 or 85 counties all of a sudden are without power or internet, people are going to notice that, I would think. You're also talking about cutting power to schools, to hospitals, to businesses, to the homes of Democrats as well as Republicans. This came from a conspiracy theory website, and unfortunately it's gotten some attention because people are understandably concerned about what is coming down the road. But we have to be cognizant of what is real and what is fake. We have to be aware of the fact that there are people who want to stir up trouble, and then we have to be cognizant of the fact that there are people who want to make a buck off of other people's fear. And all of those things, I think, are happening in the state of Virginia. So again, I've got that piece at Bearing Arms right now, separating fact from fiction. We get into the bills that actually have been introduced, and there are more coming because the filing deadline for legislation in Virginia is not till January 17th. So, for instance, we still don't have a red flag bill that's been introduced in Virginia, but we know we're going to have one. We know that one is coming. And it could be that we're going to see dozens of other gun control bills filed as well. But we've got a list of the worst bills that you do need to be keeping track of right now. And as more bills get added, we will certainly add to that list. And if there are more rumors that need to be debunked, we will certainly do that as well. All right, let's get to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report, which comes from Philadelphia. This individual, Aleem Gillard, has been charged with involuntary manslaughter and obstruction of justice after his own 18-year-old son, Sahel Gillard, was killed, allegedly by his twin brother, Fayad Gillard. Authorities learned that this was an accident, but it was an accident that was enabled by their dad. KYW Radio in Philly reports that Aleem Gillard has a lengthy criminal history, was a felon illegally possessing a firearm, as a matter of fact, and apparently gave the gun to his two teenagers to quote, play with. The district attorney, Larry Krasner, says not only did Aleem Gillard encourage his children to handle a deadly weapon, resulting in the accidental shooting of one of his twin boys, he later instructed his two surviving traumatized children to lie to authorities so that he could keep himself out of prison. He's right now been charged with possession of a weapon by a convicted felon, corruption of a minor, endangering the welfare of a child. Homicide Unit Supervisor Anthony Voci said these two young men, bonded since birth, known to be talented student athletes with bright futures ahead, Sahel's life was unfairly cut short because of an illegal firearm and the recklessness of Aleem Gillard. And again, this is one of the issues here, I think, with, these safe stores laws. We've got a bill that's been introduced in Virginia that would criminalize parents who allow their minor children to have unsupervised access to a firearm, no matter how much training they might have had. The idea, supposedly, would be to cut down on tragedies like this one. But how many laws were already broken by Aleem Gillard even possessing a firearm in the first place? Instead, these proposals in Virginia would make it impossible for a mom and dad to decide that their 16-year-old daughter was old enough to handle a firearm or even have access to a firearm if she were home alone in the house. Their 17-year-old could not go hunt on their property unless an adult was around. Again, there are all kinds of reasons why parents can decide that their minor children can have access to a firearm and do so responsibly. Those would be criminalized in an attempt to cut down on tragedies like this. I think a far better solution is better education and training, but obviously you also got to deal with repeat felons who illegally possess firearms, and you're not going to do that with another gun control bill aimed at law-abiding gun owners. Sadly. Again, in this case, you've got an individual who was prohibited by law from possessing a firearm, and his son is dead as a result. Now, today's armed citizen story from South Carolina, Richland County, South Carolina, where officers say a man was killed after he tried to break into a home after a domestic dispute. And again, this is one of those cases where, police were aware of what was happening. The state newspaper in South Carolina says the shooting happened around 6 a.m. In Richland County in a home in Columbia, South Carolina. Deputies had responded to a domestic call at the home earlier that evening, but before they got there, the guy had taken off. He then returned, the sheriff's department said, tried to break in through a window, and the homeowner then shot him. The man was taken to an area hospital where he died. Richland County Coroner's Office will identify the man after notifying his family. No other injuries reported by the sheriff. Sheriff's Department says they're continuing to investigate. But again, this looks like a clear-cut case of self-defense and a case where the police had been called out. Someone's trying to mess with me. But again, the guy takes off. And no matter how concerned the homeowner is going to be, the police aren't going to station a car there outside of the home all night. They have other calls to go to. They cannot protect you as an individual every second of your day. Thankfully, again, this homeowner was able to protect themselves when this guy came back and tried to break into the home. Finally, we have our good deed of the day from Leeds, Alabama, where a police officer came to the aid of a family who had their Christmas stolen from them, at least their Christmas presents. Bobby Barker is a teacher at Leeds School. She says, I think it's amazing what this officer did. I really do. The officer in question didn't want to go on camera with local TV ABC 3340, but his name is Zach Harrison. He's a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. He's a police officer there in Leeds, Alabama. He responded to a call where somebody had stolen presents from a single mom and her kids. The investigation is ongoing, but in the meantime, Zach Harrison replaced the gifts with his own money. Just unbelievable. He says he did not do it for the recognition. He says he just wanted to make sure that no family goes without during the Christmas season. So I wish I had a picture of Officer Zach Harrison for you from Leeds, Alabama. I don't, but I can tell you that Officer Harrison, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. We thank you, sir, for your very, very good deed. That is, unfortunately, about all the time that we have for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company, but thank you for being a part of the program. Just a reminder, we do have a very busy week for Second Amendment sanctuaries in Virginia. Tomorrow evening, Tuesday night, I will be in Prince Edward County, Farmville, Virginia, which is where we do our show each and every day. They're going to be having their vote. Then Wednesday night, I'll be in Amelia County for the Second Amendment sanctuary vote as well. We'll have complete coverage of all of the votes at bearingarms.com, so make sure that you check the website regularly. You can also subscribe to Bearing Arms Cam & Company at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, townhall.com's podcast page. And you can become a VIP member of Bearing Arms as well, exclusive content, commentary, analysis, and more. Thanks again for being a part of the program today. Have a fantastic rest of your Monday. We'll see you here soon with another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company.